Okay, so we have provided a bunch of files in the Slack, and one of those files is the local installation tutorial. So I will basically go through this, so you can have the document. You can follow me online, or you can just follow me and then complete the local installation using this this tutorial. So the requirements, as we stated in the invitation, is that you have installed Git and Docker. So are one of some of you following the tutorial? Are you going to actually install the Flapjack instance? Great. So for those that will, please make sure that you have installed Git and Docker. Probably Anaconda for later, but that's also an optional part of the tutorial. So I will go ahead. First, wrapping up this whole tutorial. No, this is not. Because what's Flapjack at the end? It's a full stack web application. What is that? What does that means? It means that it has, well, a database that it was already explained, but I will go quickly through this. The main idea of the database is to emulate the lab workflow. So when you have a scientific question or project, you develop many assays. Each of those assays contain samples that are measured, and those samples are within a specific context, genetic and cellular context. But the architecture, this full stack web application, is pretty similar to the existing platforms, at least for synthetic biology. I don't know if you know the pharmacokinetics database from Matthias Koning. Well, also EDD from the JBay Institute, SynBioHub. All of them have the same full stack structure, architecture, which is first the backend, which contains the database and the functions, and then the front end, which just makes requests to this backend. So we have these three implementations, which are the API itself, because it's we exposed a REST API and a WebSockets API, and plus we also developed the user interface, which is the one that Carlos shown you. So this user interface corresponds to this container, let's say. And we have a third part, which is the Python package that Gonzalo has just presented. The idea of this package is to wrap up the REST API. So you can access to the API using terminal commands, JavaScript commands in a script, or Python. So we wrap up the API functions for making the access to the database mainly easier, because that's the whole point of this, or the main point of this. The user interface is just a way to easily visualize the data, but this is the core. So we store the data, we analyze and we perform all the computations in the API. So you don't need the front end Actually, it's more slow. When you have the Python API, you just go to a notebook or a script, and then you start retrieving your data, uploading data, performing analysis. So it's much more efficient for people that has some regular Python skills. So said that, we have different resources for all of these components. First, we have the Flapjack API repo. All of this, well, this architecture is based on microservices. So in microservices, so each of these is a Docker service. And all of these are wrapped up in a Docker compose file. So, for example, here we have this is a Python container. This is the Postgres container, the Redis container, and we have the Node container here. So it's a microservices architecture. And the three main repos for the API, Flapjack API, then Flapjack frontend, and the Flapjack repo for the Python package. And we also have documentation for the API and documentation for the Python package. All of these links are in a document that we also uploaded, so don't rush, or it's stored, but it's pretty well documented. This is for the API, for the backend, and for the front end, we have a pretty comprehensive tutorial, which is somehow what Carlos went through. It's basically how to use Flapjack, registering, view data, uploading data. So everything is pretty well documented here. I checked just now, and we do not have a file. So after this, I will upload a file, a layout. And we also have some notebooks that I will go through after for testing the Python package using your own data or data that's in the main Flapjack server, which is basically what Gonzalo did. And I will give just one example that's related with the paper. This is figure 5 of the paper, and what we like from this is that you can perform the same operations, of course, in the front end and in the Python package, because they are using the same API, that you can replicate the same results that you obtain in the user interface using the Python package in a Jupyter notebook. So this is the publication if you are interested, and that's it. Let's start. So if you are following the document, you first need to clone the two main repos, the Flapjack API and the Flapjack frontend. In this case, we will use not the master branch, but the development branch. So you need to go git clone, and for the branch, we go to develop. Yeah. All right. And then we go to Flapjack folder, and what we will see, well, I usually do this using VS Code. I don't know what's more comfortable for you. because I use the same terminals. No containers, no, great. And here, the first thing that I need to do is to build the container. What build does, just follows the orders from the Docker file. So it will pull all the requirements and will run all these commands. And after that, we just start the container with Docker compose app. And that's going to follow this file, the Docker compose file. So as I told you, the architecture is based on microservices, and all of those microservices are described in this file. So I have here 3 services, which are the Flapjack API itself, the application, the Django application, the database, which is a Postgres database, and this is hard-coded now. I left it with my information, so you can just use it later when I explain how to access the database. And we have the Redis service for the WebSocket API, WebSockets API. So this container is up and running. I'm using the Django's development server for sake of this tutorial. So I'm running this this command when starting the application, but we are actually connected to Unicorn, so we assign our workers and timeouts, etc. via Unicorn, but I'm just using the Django server, development server. So I built and I started the container, but now I need one extra step, which is to access the container. I don't know if you or many of you are familiar with containers, but each of these containers, well, Docker is like the virtual machines, but simplified. So each of these containers is like a virtual instance, so you can enter through those servers, let's say, to those environments. So we will enter our API container. This is the name. So we have names for the 3 microservices: the API, the database, and Redis. We don't have name because we don't use it in bash mode. So we enter the container. Now we are inside this container. Actually, if we have a look into the folders, the list of the folders and files, we can see that actually we are in the deployment folder. And here, what we will do now, the way on Django and other web development frameworks work is that you have your database table, your SQL in our case, our relational database, written in SQL files or syntax. So in order to this database to interact with Flapjack, with Django, sorry, with the Django framework, Django has an ORM, which is the one that connects the SQL database with Django via Python objects. So in order to do that, we need to migrate the data is. And what manage is? Manage is it's the Django client. So every time that you want to perform some action or some command or some method into Django, you go to manage. And in this case, we will migrate the database. And that's it. And that's it. So what we do have now is just this part of the web application up and running. Actually, if we go to our web browser, we should be able to check this. It's in the port 8000. The API is exposed in the port 8000, and the front end is exposed in the 3000. So we should be able to do this unless yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's good because I haven't registered yet, so I don't have the token. So now we go to the next part, which is starting the front end, and it's the same procedure. Actually, if you I'll do this in the so I will do the same. I will go to the front end repo. I will clone the repo. If you don't have Git, you can just download the folder in a zip file. Then you can just compress it and start it. So git clone front end repo. We will go to the dev branch as well, and then I always go to code. Yeah, this will take longer because the microservices that we use are heavier. But the only thing that you need to actually configure in the front end is the environment file. So you add the environment file. This is with this along with the files that we provided to you. You need to hide it. Yeah. Well, what's the idea of having an environment file? Is that when you are working in development, for example, you don't want to point to a private or a public API. You just want to, well, this is a local API, IP, sorry, IP. But you want to point to your local host. So when you want to run the production application, you need to have another environmental file, which will point to the public IP that you have for your server. So this part of the tutorial is also oriented for servers administrators or just for scientists that want to install their version in their laptops or local servers in order to explore their data. So we will cover this here. And again, Docker Compose. Here we're using two different Docker files, so we need to specify, Docker Compose files, we need to specify which one. We will go to the dev and we will build. What's the main difference of these two? Just the environmental file and the node server. So in the development Docker Compose file, we're using, as I show you, the local host to point to start our application, and environments, there are some node environments variables. So that's the only thing we change here. But usually when you are developing and you have a developed version, maybe a QA version and then a production version, you have different Docker Compose files. For example, when you are in development, and that's also that I will talk with you later, you don't need to add Nginx, for example, to the microservices, because you are just trying it locally. But if you are in production, yeah, you will like to add Nginx as a service, and it's not here, and it's in the API repo here. After Race or after each of the microservices, you could add the Nginx microservice, which is provided by Docker in Docker Hub. So that would be a difference in production and in development. Currently, that's also important for those of you that maybe want to install a Flapjack instance, not just for you, but for your lab, is that there are much more. There are many ways, but the way on which we are working now is that Flapjack architecture contains the microservice, the Nginx microservice, into the API Docker Compose file. But we're not using it at the moment. We're not using this configuration. Because this is ideally for you when you want to have a server dedicated for Flapjack. So you just have everything set up inside the application. You just start the container. But if you have a server with more than one application, or you're exposing different services, web services, etc., you may want to organize your proxy outside of each of all of these applications, and you make configurations, Nginx configurations for each of them. So we are not using that architecture now. We in the server that we have Flapjack developed, but we do have the branch. We do right. It's Amazon. This is the one, I think. Amazon deploying production. Yeah, Nginx. So in this branch, that actually was designed for the Amazon Web Services deploy, but in Amazon Web Services we just set up our Nginx file. So, but it is the possibility to use Nginx as a microservice inside the Flapjack application. So let's check how this went. Yeah, still installing some requirements. Any question at this point? this is pretty standard. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. I mean, you can just follow the tutorial, follow the commands, and have your Flapjack local instance up and running. And I will go, for example, to the models or the analysis. Yes. So So, as Sai asked, for the analysis plugins, the way on Django works is that inside Django you create different apps, different applications is called, but it's a way on separating tasks. So we have these Django applications. We have first the registry, which is the database. We have the models defined here. So as Michael was asking as well, here you define the database model. Actually, we do not define an SQL file. This is converted into the SQL file after. So this is one of the database models table, as I show here. This is how you find the tables in Django. You just go by defining a class for study, a class for assay. Of course, yeah, there are more complicated things for setting up the permissions and etc. It's pretty modular. And now with Sai, so we have the registry, and the registry is the Django application that handles the data. So it receives the files, it parses the files, and it stores the data into the database. So we have consumers for the WebSockets API, and we have the routes, the URLs for the REST API. So if you would like to add another model, you need to have another endpoint for the model, or if you want to read another type of file, you need just to change these consumers in the registry. Consumers, the consumer is the script or the part from the application that receives the request from the front end, and then is the one that sends the results to the front end as well. So here we have different types of operations. One of them is upload. So if you want to upload some data, we have different functions, utils. So we have all the parsers here. Actually, I just removed the BMG parser, but if the parameter from the front end says that the machine is a BMG plate reader, you go through this part of the code. And if it's a Synergy machine, you will use this parser, etc. So if you would like to read files from another type of instrument, we should basically add this, which is the parser, and then the function that stores the data into the database. And the same for analysis. Well, this is the main application. Then we have plot and analysis, and accounts is just an application for handling authorization and permissions. But the other two important applications are, and this is the settings file. This is the name of the application. So we have plot and we have analysis applications. So in analysis, we have just different types of analysis, and you have different functions: analyze, compute background, get background, etc. So if you would like to add another type of analysis, this would be the way, like adding some kind of module or a superclass or some, I don't know, we were thinking on inheritance of classes, something like that, or even drag and drop modules for the front end. Well, we have all kind of ideas. The same in plot. We have the plots that you saw in the, well, some of them you saw in the previous tutorial, but we have chymographs, heat maps, induction curves, bar plots, etc., and all of those are also defined here. So I don't know if I can call it modular, but we've been through that process. As Gonzalo said, we have just finished working on another characterization method based on inverse problems, and then we wanted to use it in the Flapjack application, and we just needed to actually add, okay, because these are the analyses, and we just needed to add the code to the analysis script, and then in the front end to just add the option here, for example, expression rate using the inverse method, and then you send that parameter to the backend, and the backend understands that it has to perform the inverse method, and it retrieves the information. So actually, what we think is that that's the easiest part. That would be the easiest part, to add more analysis methods. But for now, you can do that anyway, but using the Python package, retrieving the data and applying your custom analysis. And so I suppose that this is done already. Yes. And now we need to start the containers. Starting with my server. So this is the public. Don't get confused. This is the public instance. And now we need to check if our app is running, and it's not, because it hasn't finished this yet. Yeah. Now it's done. So also pay attention to this. Not pay attention, but this is also a development server and a development environment. So now we check. and it's working. And this is an error. No, that shouldn't happen because it cached the my session in the public instance. So it's working for me, at least. Have you or some of you tried? How did you go? Do you have any questions? We will continue for a couple of 20 minutes. No? Nada? Okay. So, okay, I have my local instance working. And what now? First, I need to make an account. Registered, done. I'm registered. I'm gonna change this because, yeah, I usually, I don't know, I like to see the code and to see the log, but in this case, the front-end log is not that useful, so we'll go to this. This is the API. This is the API log. So everything that I do here appears in the log. So now I'm gonna upload some data. See, so I used the upload button, but when this page loads, it goes for getting all the studies because it will suggest me which study to put here. Now the database is empty and we need to create a new study. So it will be CRISPR IWBDA. Same as Carlos. I will go pretty quick through this because you already know. Oh, no. It's a good reminder. Then I'm using the HTX plate reader. I need to upload the file. The file that I will upload. Remember that Gonzalo shown two assays, one of the constitutive promoters and the other of the induction curves. I will use the one of the induction curves. And again, I will show you just in case the file. It's separated into sheets. You can have more than one chemical, saying chemical, any chemical, antibiotic, inducers, etc. Cell-free compounds. DNA, you can have more than one DNA. Strains, yes, good question. We can have more than one strain. And media, just one, which is the recipe basically. And if you put none, this well won't be uploaded. Next, assay, CRISPR assay, temperature. This is just for having data in my local instance and being able to show you what I want you to see. I don't have DNA objects created into the database as well, so I will. It's not mandatory to put the SBOL URI, but we do have SBOL URIs for this, and I won't go through this, but I will let you know where the notebook is, and we perform some compositional analysis using the SBOL URIs by connecting to to the SynBioHub repo. Name, chemical, yes, PTG. You can put the PubChem ID or any other description, name, etc. Next, then signals, which the signals are identified by Flapjack by reading this. So the parser, recording stop, recording progress. So the parser checks this column and it identifies 3 signals. So those are the signals that it includes here. Yeah, we'll close the file. Name of the, I don't know, optical density, and we put the color because this label will then be used in our color palette. So if you put gray, OD will be represented with gray, etc. Same here, CFP, description, CFP, color, cyan, YFP, yellow fluorescent protein, color, yellow. And then submit metadata. Submit metadata will upload the measurements associated with the metadata. So this is the end of the process. Like you click here and you will upload the data. Some comments. This will work way faster than our server. This is my local computer, and yeah, that's it basically. In the server, it usually works pretty fast, but as you know, when you want to show something, it works different. So here, and I'm seeing the log. I have just this print for easy of information, the easiest of information. And then that's it, basically, for this part. Now we can go to, well, we are in browse. We can explore which data is in the database, which are the vectors that are contained. And when you add the SBOL URI, and you click to this text, you go directly to the SynBioHub website to see the part. And before, it's not implemented anymore, but we were planning to do it before. We were working with James McLaughlin, because he was developing, and I think it's ready by now, the SBOL visual. So before, we were able to, just by hovering on the text, and we were able to see the actual construct on an SBOL visual way. But by that time, it wasn't completely developed by James and his team. So we didn't use it, but we will, of course, because it's really, I don't know, useful. I think, because if you have the name of the DNA, this doesn't say much. But if you have the option to observe the actual construct, that's pretty nice. I think pretty cool stuff. We were pretty happy when we implemented it, but the problem was, this is anecdotal, The problem was that the whole backbone was represented. So you have a small transcriptional unit and the whole backbone going to the right. So next time. And then in your local instance, you already uploaded data, and we can perform some queries, some analysis. These filters, yeah, doesn't make much sense. We have just one study, one assay. The vectors, we have 3 vectors. This is not useful, so we will just use those 2. Strain, we do have one media, and signal, we want to plot the 3 signals, OD, CFP, and OFP. And then those are the query parameters. Then I can, if I don't put any analysis, Flapjack won't perform any analysis. And this plot options is used on visualization and calculations or rendering the information. So you can normalize. As you were saying, yeah, we just have arbitrary units and we do not have calibrated units, but at least in terms of being able to compare information, we can normalize by different methods. So at least we can, for example, compare profiles that have the same shape, expression rate profiles on time. That maybe they don't have the same magnitude for different DNA constructs, but they have the same shape. So that would be used as a property or whatever. And as I think Carlos told you, you can group the result in subplots. So here you choose how the subplots would be separated by signal, by vector, etc. So what we will do here, we will perform analysis. This is the CRISPR-I experiment that Gonzalo also shown. Induction curve. We know that we have a PTG as a gradient because, yeah, we do have a PTG and ATC, but ATC, as you know, is for the genetic working of the circuit, because we don't change the concentration of ATC. No. Okay, see. Sorry. Ahora sí. Well, the induction curve needs a function to be calculated, so I will use the mean expression, minimum biomass 0.5, and then plot. And I'm having a look into a log here, some prints. That's it. So I separated the subplots using signal. So I have the CFP plot, the OD plot, and the YFP plot. And the lines, the curves in each of the plots, I separated them by vector. So in each of them I have 2 vectors, and each of the colors represent each of them. And that's it for the front end in your local instance. And now we will go to, I will show you some of the features that Django has for analyzing, for for exploring your data. We already have one assay, I mean, corresponding to one study, which contains 3 vectors. We use 3 signals, 1 strain and 1 media. So the first tool that Django provides you to explore your database is the shell. So using the Django client, you go to shell, and you will be dropped into a Python shell in the location that you currently are. So this is pretty interactive, so I can start working on exploring the data. These are Django functions, some of them that I will show you, but from our from the registry application, right? We have the models. We have the models here. So we need to import them. And then we can make use of them in this terminal. So if I would like to check how many studies there are, or how many assays or users. So I know that the model is called study, so I go study. Study, I'm able to use study because I import all of these classes. So I go on study, and I ask for all the objects, and I return a query set that says this is the only, I mean, this shows all the studies contained, but this is the only study contained in our database. And the same for all the objects, like assay, objects, all. And I can perform other functions such as filter. This is the name, I think. CRISPR assay. Yeah, and it will return me the same object because I just have one. So this is a pretty cool feature because I usually use this to get a data frame from the database, like using the utils. That's more complicated, and if you want to dig into that, well, we will be really happy and we can help you. But this is pretty useful to start interacting with your database. And now you can go to the Django documentation to see what are the methods and functions and attributes for this class, the model class, because each of these, the study, the assay, is a model class, model object. And the second, it's also in the, remember that we are inside the API container. I will exit twice. Okay, so we are just in our command line again, and remember that we entered the container by doing we execute the container in an interactively the container called API in bash. So we entered the API, and there we made this Python manage shell. Just to make it clear. It's in the tutorial anyway, but if you get confused. And now, still inside the container, we can use the PostgreSQL client with the user Guillermo, which is defined here in the database microservice, which host, we're hosting the database into the database microservice, and the database that we want to enter is called registry. That's how we call our database, registry. And that's why the Django application is called registry and etc. Then you go enter. Yeah, you put the password that's here. Usually you do this, you provide this kind of information using an environment file, which has, well, among other information, this credentials. So us as Flapjack developers, we provide all the code, but then when you make your local installation, you also need to put your own environment files. One thing that we are lacking still is actually to implement the environment. I have the environment file, but I'm not using it here because of the tutorial. But that's the environment file. And you enter to a registry, so you're now in the database. And what can you do in the database? Everything that you can do in an SQL environment. So I can display the tables. Besides the applications that I do have here, I use other Django applications. And that's why Django has this containerization or modularization, because then I could have the registry application and could be used by another Django application. So I use other Django applications such as Django REST framework. We use Django REST framework to implement the REST API. So here we will have all the applications tables. We have the authorization tables, we have Django, and we have ours. Remember that our database is called registry, and we do have all the tables from our database. And then you can go and just write a SQL statement, for example, registry study, and then it shows you the results. Connect. Also, well, using PSQL, I'm going to exit here now. Using PSQL, you can make backups of your database. The good thing is, and these are more, well, we can discuss it anyway. But yeah, we do have a special volume for the Flapjack database, but that's kind of heavy because it's in Docker's configuration or semantics. But here inside the container, you can use a command which I don't exactly remember which one is it, like a backup, and then you put the output of your file. So for example, before this whole tutorial, I made a backup of our database, just in case. And that's it. yeah, that's it. That's what I have in the tutorial document. Any question? Because I will go quickly through other stuff, kind of to finish up how all the API, the front end, the Python package, the local installation connect each other. So you have any question? I'm still on air. Wow. I'm just talking to myself.
No, we can hear you, Guillermo.
Great. Any question then? Okay, great. I assume I'm being clear. Open Zoom. How many people? Okay. And well, that's it basically. Then you will continue uploading your data, analyzing your data using the user interface. But what we think is way cooler is our Flapjack API. I mean, our Flapjack package. Another one. No. Yeah, so what we will, what we did actually when we published the paper, we have several figures. So all of the figures in the paper, and I'll show you the figures, or the main figures. Front-end documentation. Vale. Sale. Bueno, si no. No. So we have several figures in the Flapjack paper, and yeah, of course, we did not perform this figure with Flapjack, but these plots and these graphs we did. So what we have provided in the Flapjack repo in the notebooks folder is a way on replicating the figures. Well, previously were 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, but now they are in the supplementary information. So they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What we provided here is the notebooks for replicating the figures using the Python package. Because these figures were made using the front end. The front end. No, not this one. Yeah, these parts. This is the table that Gonzalo shown you. You are able to characterize field functions, etc. So now, actually, I will show you this notebook quickly because it's also in our repos. But now, differently as Gonzalo did, because Gonzalo used the Python package in order to connect to the main Flapjack instance, and now I'll do this using my instance, the data that's in my local installation. So I just go through the notebook, I import Flapjack. Of course, I need to have Flapjack installed. For this, I'm running Jupyter in an Anaconda environment. In the Anaconda environment, I installed Flapjack and the Flapjack environment, and then I just run the Jupyter notebook. So I am able to use Flapjack, the Flapjack Python package, some functions to perform to the data, and then now I will change this to localhost. And yeah, good. So if you see in the log, there were a post request sent to log in and with the code 200, so it was successful. And I am inside Flapjack. I'm logged. Well, anyway, if you are not logged correctly, it will show you a message. Well, we give some description. We really have everything documented. We have a lot of material. So it's all indicated. And as Gonzalo shown you, you just query the database. So you obtain the study ID. ¿Cuál es? Data frame. We need to fix this. Yeah, no, it's no. See, well, this wasn't part of the tutorial. I wanted to show you something else, but I think we need to modify this. Do it pretty weird. Qué torpe. Yeah. No, sorry, my bad. Because you need to use the name of the study that you gave to your file. So this is the name of the study, and then I will be able to. Yeah, and I need to extract the ID. So yeah, perfect. That's it. That was it. So learning for all of us. Yeah. So as you saw, with this you are querying the database because you are using the Flapjack object fj first to log in and then to get data from the study data model, and which study or by which field I would like to filter by name, and this is the name that I want, and I will get like the whole study. Yeah. Let's do this. We'll receive a data frame. So I will just pull the ID. That's why I do the ID. And the rest of the information is correct because we do have the same vectors, same chemical, same signal for the biomass. And then I think I will be I should not improvise. Huh. No. Yeah. Ahí está. Bueno. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I need to make some refining of this. But the idea was that, that's a shame. The idea was to, now that I have my local installation of Flapjack and I have uploaded data, I now want to explore it, especially if from another lab, but the Flapjack's data model fits to my experimental layout. I could upload the data to Flapjack and then use this Python package to make custom analysis and actually make what the idea from Flapjack is, to just provide a few analysis tools. Hopefully we will be growing with the time, but the idea is for people to store and then use their own custom software or their own analysis tools. And that's it. That's it. Well, that's a shame that this didn't work, but it will work just now. We sent the files through the Slack channel, and in those files there's Gonzalo's notebook, but in this summary, in this document summary, we have the different links for everything. So this is the public instance. These are the repos for like the code of the repos, and this is the wiki of the user interface, the one that I just shown you. I should add this. And so everything is in the files, and well, it would be great if you would like to install your own Flapjack version. You can just contact us. Probably you will try to upload data and it would break, so you can also contact us. You would like to implement another analysis or maybe some other good feedback, and we can work with you. We can add the analysis, and actually, as I shown you, it's kind of straightforward. So that's it. Thanks a lot for your patience, for being still here. 6 people. It's the lab, but it's recorded. Eso. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone for their attendance. And that was our Flapjack tutorial.